For me, in my experience is primarily with youth, so elementary, middle, and high school
Okay,
students.
okay.
So I I know it. I will say, like, learning, I guess there are a lot of similarities across the board, but there's definitely going to be differences in youth learners versus adult learners. But I would say with my students, especially my high schoolers, and I don't think that this is a reflection of them or their ability to learn. I think this is a reflection of the school system, because so much of school is just not necessarily encouraging critical thinking. It's just, encouraging you to remember facts and regurgitate them so that you can take a test and pass.
Mm-hmm.
But, what is the application of that after the class is over? So I do find that when they're first learning, a lot of students get frustrated because it's, first off, it's like nothing that they've ever encountered before. Coding is, I always like to say, just like if you're learning a different language, if you're learning French, or if you're learning Spanish, or if you're learning Japanese, those languages have rules that you have to follow in order for people to understand you. And it's the exact same thing with coding. You're coding so that you can essentially talk to your computer, or talk to a browser and get it to do what you want it to do. And computers have very different logic from humans.
Right.
So with if you're speaking a foreign language and maybe you mess up a word, unless it is just like completely, you were just completely off track, like generally they'll understand what you mean. But in coding, if you have a period in the wrong place, or if you misspell something by accident, it's not going to know what you mean. You have to be exact, and you have to follow those rules. You have to follow those syntax rules. Otherwise, it's just going to give you an error, because it's like, I don't know what you want me to do, because I've only been taught to follow these rules.
Yep.
And getting them to kind of shift their thinking into from human logic, because human logic obviously is very intuitive. Computer logic is very, is very literal.
Got you.
So you have to kind of switch your thinking in from, well, I know instinctively to do this, but you have to assume that the computer doesn't know what you're doing. So you have to like break everything down into steps. And for me, I feel like when people have a hard time shifting into that mindset, and also just the way it's written, it's not written like I said, once again, you're applying computer logic. These languages are intended to be something that the computer understands, but it's not. It's hard to apply like human communication or human speech to computer logic, because until you start breaking it down, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. So I will say, I just get a lot of students that kind of, is the minute that they don't get something, they don't want to try. And they just, kind of like clock out. And then it's kind of hard to reach them. And I mean, sometimes those students will clock out, but then, they will they'll grudgingly work through it, and then they have a breakthrough. And then when they have the breakthrough, that is like the best moment, because it's just like, you were fighting this so hard, and you were making it harder on yourself, but then all you had to do was just like put a little bit more effort. Like, and I always tell my students, you know more than you think you know.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
you're
Yep.
not, even if you're not getting it right every single time, you know more than you think you know. You understand this. It's just going to take time, and it's going to take like I always say like repetition, like you got to do it over and over and over again until it becomes like until it's like muscle memory.
Yep.
So I just, there are people who just give up too soon.
Yep.
And that's, but like I said, I feel like that's more of a reflection of just the way that I guess things are taught in school. It's not, people don't, they're not necessarily expected to work through things, to work things out. They're just expected to like have an answer, or or there's only going to be one answer. But I always, I like to tell my students, I'm showing you how to do this, but if you find another way, do that, do whatever works, just whatever gets the job done.
Yep.
So I'm showing you, I'm giving you like an entryway, but if you are doing, and I would do coding challenges and say, all right, so we just went over, based on what I want you to research. Google is your friend.
Thanks.
I'm like, this is what we do. We Google things to try, when we need to fix things. So I'm like, Google is your friend. Look up these terms, and then look up how to do X, Y, and Z, and do it in your text editor.
Yep.
And see it, and then I'm like, before you raise your hand,
figure it out.
Did you Google it? Did you ask somebody? Did you ask one of your friends? Maybe somebody next to you got it.
Yep.
Before you ask me. Because it's just me in the classroom of like 20 students. Like I can't help everybody at the same time. So it's just like,
Yep.
You need to, like I said, this is where the problem solving comes in. You need to take those steps to try and figure it out before you come running to me and say, I don't get it.
True.
So, and then after, I make them struggle, make them like, they get mad at me and they're like, whatever. And then I go and show them like, okay, this is how we do it. Or this is one way that you can do it. Who did this, or did anybody do anything different? What did you do?